greeting you all with the Islamic Muslim greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all. Whenever I'm asked to speak about women in Islam, I'm never quite sure where to begin. Often I choose to begin with a story that I used to love growing up. I like to begin with the story of the ugly duckling. The story was always very meaningful to me because it showed that things are not always what they seem, and that beauty does not mean being just like the rest. So in the beginning, the mother duck looked proudly at all the beautiful ducklings which had just hatched. But while she did, she noticed that there was one that was different. It was large and not at all like the others. Soon that duck came to be known as the ugly duckling. It was different and didn't quite fit. When God created humanity, there were men, and then there were some who were not at all like the rest. They were women. They didn't run as fast and they cried too much. Those women spent their whole lives wondering, were they just bad copies of men? Am I, as a woman, that ugly duckling? Am I just a bad copy of the standard? Islam tells me no. Islam tells me I'm a swan. You see, as a woman, I am different, but it's meant to be that way. Like that swan among ducks, Islam tells me I am honored by God through my distinctiveness, not my sameness to men. God says men and women are created as a pair, equal but not identical, complementary, not competing. When referring to women, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that women are the shakat of men, meaning other half. God says in the Quran, the believing men and believing women are protectors one of the other. It is further stated in the Quran that they are garments for you and you are garments for them. We are told in the Quran that both men and women are honored in the sight of God by way of their piety and devotion to Him. But in contrast to what I read in the Quran, growing up in this society, we as women find ourselves surrounded by a culture that teaches us that our worth is measured by the shape of our legs. Everywhere we look, we find women on the cover of magazines wearing virtually nothing, their bodies used on billboards to sell cars and to promote beer. Their value reduced to how pretty or sexy they are. We as women are taught to give our life, our body, our dignity for the cause of being pretty. Some of us even starve ourselves to fit this standard, as if our bodies were created to be on display or market cars. As women, we learn early on that no matter what we do, no matter how accomplished we might be, we are worthy only to the degree that we can please and be beautiful for men. And so we spend our lives on the cover of 𝐁𝐔𝐒𝐒 and give our bodies for advertisers to sell. To see the extent of this, one has only to look at how even professional women in our society are portrayed. Take, for example, professional female athletes. The image was familiar, a woman with no visible clothing decorating the cover of a magazine. But this time the woman was Brandy Christian, defender for the U.S. Women's 1999 World Cup champion soccer team. Although Christian had scored the winning goal during the final game, Gear magazine chose to focus on an asset other than her talent for soccer. Christian was photographed bending over, wearing nothing but 2 soccer balls across her chest. These images are common. Often the only way to ascertain which sport female professionals play, or even that they play a sport, at all is by looking at the type of ball that covers their naked body. In fact, we haven't come very far in the last decade. Just last month, Sports Illustrated featured a picture of Olympic gold medalist Lindsey Vonn next to the headline, "America's Best Women Skier Ever." But what is most telling is how Vonn was depicted. She was pictured bending over in a highly sexualized pose. According to the International Olympic Committee, 42% of competing athletes in the 2000 Summer Games were women. Of the 39 world records set at the Sydney Olympics, 23 were women. The American delegation to the Games was 43% female, and women won 40% of the medals awarded to the Americans. And yet only 6 to 8% of sports news coverage featured female athletes. But what is most telling is that of those athletes that are portrayed, the media often chooses to focus on their bodies and other physical features rather than on their ability as athletes. Olympic champion swimmer Jenny Thompson, for example, was shown in Sports Illustrated wearing red boots, boxer swim pants, and holding her hands across bare breasts. Some images sexualize and dehumanize women to the point of showing only fragments of her body, like her leg or chest. By portraying accomplished women in this way, the focus is taken away from their achievements in their field and towards their achievements as sexy bodies and pretty smiles. Anna Kournikova is one of the best examples of this implication. A famous tennis player, Kournikova was one of the most publicized and highly endorsed female athletes. And yet Kournikova had never won a singles match in all of her career. Why then was she one of the most highly endorsed athletes if she can't play tennis? AskMen.com answers this question beautifully. Under the heading, "Why is she famous?" they write, quote, "Aside from single-handedly making women's tennis popular again, Anna Kournikova is one of the most searched people on the internet, thanks to her amazing looks. She proves that you don't need to be a star tennis player to be one of the most highly endorsed athletes, nor do you need killer tennis skills to have a deadly internet virus named after you." The point here is obvious. If you're a woman, your talent is not in your accomplishments, but in your amazing look. One would wonder if the most highly endorsed male athlete could be a man who had accomplished nothing in his sport. No, such an endorsement would never happen, because men are judged for their talent, while women are judged for their looks. Countless magazines teach us how to be thinner, sexier, more attractive to men. Show it, flaunt it, be on display. The message to women is clear. Your purpose in life is to be on display, to attract and be beautiful for men, and your worth is defined and measured by how attractive and sexy you succeed at being. Islam defines the honor of a woman very differently. God says in the Quran, "Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of God is he who is most righteous." And God has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things. So it is by my relationship with God, not with men, that I am honored. My worth as a woman is not measured by the size of my waist or the number of men who like me. My purpose in life, despite what the fashion magazines say, is something more sublime than just being attractive for men. My worth, my purpose, is measured on a different scale, a scale of righteousness and piety. And so God tells me as a woman to cover myself, to cover my beauty and tell the world that I'm not here to please men with my body. I'm here to please God. God elevates the dignity of a woman's body by commanding that it be respected and covered, shown only to the worthy, only to the man I marry. As a woman, Islam tells me I'm not here to be on display, and my body is not for public consumption. I am not to allow anyone to reduce me to an object or a pair of legs to sell shoes. I am a soul, a mind, a servant of God. I don't worship beauty standards, and I don't submit to fashion sense. My submission is to something higher. My worth is defined by the beauty of my soul, my heart, my moral character. And so when you look at me, that character is all you should see, not my body. With my veil, I put my faith on display rather than my beauty. Because my value as a human being is defined by my relationship with God, not by my looks. So I cover the irrelevant. And when you look at me, you don't see a body. You view me only as what I am, a servant of my Creator. And so to talk about women in Islam without first talking about God would be like describing a leaf but forgetting the forest. God in Islam is at the center. He assigns value to all things. He is neither male nor female, neither black nor white. He is sublime above all that exists. He is not in need of us, for it is we who are in desperate need of Him. Nothing is good except what He commands, and all that He commands is good. He is the most just and the all-knowing. God has said in the Quran, I have not created men and jinn except to worship me. And so it is in this context of devotion to God that a Muslim woman finds her place. She is not a slave to anything else, not to men, not to fashion, not to being beautiful. She exists in this world to know and please God. Her focus is clear and her value uncompromised. It is for this reason that Islam ensured rights to women more than 1,400 years ago that we in the West did not receive until recently. More than 1,400 years ago, Islam gave women the right to vote, a right granted to women in the West in 1920. More than 1,400 years ago, Islam gave women the right to possess, own, or to dispose of any of their own property in any way she sees fit, irrespective of whether she is single or married. The first time that rights of married women were recognized in the West, whereby she could own and dispose of property without the control, approval, or consent of her husband, was in the 1870s in England under the Married Women Property Act. This act was later amended in 1882 and 1887. More than 1,400 years ago, Islam gave women the right to inherit and initiate divorce. All these rights were given to women by no struggle from themselves, because they were given by God, not by men in power. Islam tells men that they are the maintainers and protectors of women. The Holy Quran states, men are maintainers of women with the bounties which Allah has bestowed more abundantly on some of them than others, and with what they spend out of their possessions. In Islam, men have full financial responsibility for the maintenance of the family. This is not only a moral, but also an Islamic legal obligation. The wife may also work, but any money that she makes is her own. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught that any money she chooses to spend on her family is actually considered charity. The elevation of women in Islam is made very clear. In an authentic prophetic tradition, a man asked the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who amongst all people was the most worthy of his respect and compassion? The Prophet, peace be upon him, replied, your mother. The man wanted to know who should be next. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said again, your mother. The man inquired again, who next? The Prophet, peace be upon him, replied for the third time, your mother. Again the man asked who next, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, replied, your father. The Quran speaks on many occasions about the sacrifice that women make. God says, we have enjoined on humans kindness to their parents. In pain did their mother bear them, and in pain did she give them birth. The pain a woman endures in childbirth is not a punishment, but rather the opposite. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, teaches us that if a woman dies during delivery of her baby, she is considered a martyr. In another prophetic tradition, the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, O people, listen. Allah Most High commands you to treat your mothers well. Listen again, that Allah Most High orders you to be good to your mother, and thereafter to your father. Once a man came to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because he wanted to join in a military campaign. And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, actually advised him to stay and take care of his mother, because heaven is beneath the feet of your mother. The Quran also makes it clear that both men and women have the same spiritual nature. God says, O humankind, revere your guardian Lord, who created you from a single person and created of like nature his mate. God further makes clear the type of relationship that exists between men and women. The Quran says, it is he who created you from a single person and made his mate of like nature, in order that he might dwell with her in love. In another verse, God says, and among his signs is this, that he created for you mates from among yourselves, and that you may dwell in tranquility with them. And he has put love and mercy between your hearts. Verily, in this are signs for those who ponder. So you see, men and women are not bound together in a competitive physical relationship. Islam says that their bond is based on love and mercy. Their relationship is based on mutual care, consideration, respect, and affection. In an authentic prophetic tradition, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the best among you are those who are kindest to their wives. Even if divorce is decided upon, the good treatment referred to here is still required. The Quran says, then keep them in all decency or part them decently. It is not lawful to take anything you have given them. The Quran also makes clear that women have the same spiritual status as men. God says, surely for men who submit to God, and for women who submit to God, for believing men and for believing women, for devout men and devout women, for truthful men and truthful women, for steadfast men and steadfast women, for humble men and humble women, for charitable men and charitable women, for fasting men and fasting women, for men who guard their chastity and women who guard their chastity, for men who remember God much and for women who remember God much. For all of them, God has prepared forgiveness and a mighty reward. In another verse, the Quran states, whosoever performs good deeds, whether male or female, and is a believer, we shall surely grant him a peaceful and tranquil life, and we will certainly reward them for the best of what they did. God also says in the Quran, and whosoever does deeds of righteousness, whether male or female, and is a believer, they will enter heaven, and not the least injustice will be done to them. In chapter 3, verse 195 of the Quran, Allah states, their Lord responded to them, I never fail to reward any worker among you for any works you do, be you male or female. You are equal to one another. With regards to seeking an education, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "The searching of knowledge is incumbent for every Muslim." This is male or female. In fact, Aisha, the wife of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a scholar, and more than 2,000 prophetic traditions are reported by her. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used to say that one could learn half of his religion from her alone. And so the question of what a woman's place is in this world has been answered in many ways throughout time. As a Muslim woman, I feel privileged because, you see, I have been liberated from a silent kind of bondage. I don't answer to the slaves of God on earth. I answer to their king.